Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. On today's show, we see if Eternals will be eternally yours, enjoy the new festive tradition of Kristen Stewart having to endure an awkward Christmas with her partner's family in Spencer, and then review Paul Schrader's latest, The Card Counter. I'm your co-host Alice King, and with me is the Kit Harington to my Richard Madden, the Ty Sheridan to my Oscar Isaac, and the Sean Harris to my Kristen Stewart. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, really good. This is an exciting triple bill we've got today. We've got the most indie of movies with 50 producers on something like Card Counter. We've got Spencer, a big Oscar contender, and we've got a new Marvel movie. It feels like we're definitely back at the cinema.
Yeah, and after going a whole year without any Marvel content, they're now bringing them out every few weeks, it seems, at the moment, because we had Black Widow and then Shang-Chi, and then if you were on Twitter this morning, or actually technically yesterday morning technically for when this drops, you may have seen some potential spoilers from a man no less who is calling for $1 million fines for anyone who had ruined the post-credit stings of Eternals. Life comes at you pretty fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, I found that highly amusing this morning. I saw there was all this chat about spoilers, etc. And then when I realized who it was, I just could not help but laugh. I love it. To put it in your terms, what a heel turn.
Absolutely, yeah. It's unfortunately I didn't really know what it was about, and so I just searched his name on Twitter, and it immediately brought up the photos, and I was like, ugh. I mean, anyone who has an idea of what the new Spider-Man film is going to be, someone was complaining about calling it the biggest spoiler of all time. Well, I think it's confirming what we already knew and expected. But still, it would have been nice to see it in the cinema, because I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife yesterday, and there's several things in that which I wouldn't dream of spoiling for fans. I want them to experience it firsthand. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. But I had a closer look at one of the photos, and I think one of them might be a fake. The legs under the table don't match up. That's all I'm going to say. Have a look at that one. It doesn't look like the legs match up. So one might be a fake, but one is kind of what we were all expecting. But we're not going to go into that. But are going to talk about Eternals and potentially the post-credit stings of Eternals. But by now, it's been out for over a week, actually less than a week. But still, I think by Monday morning, everything's fair game released. So first on the agenda is the latest installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the 25th film in the saga, Chloe Zhao's Eternals. Fresh from sweeping awards season earlier this year with Nomadland, she helms the stories of a group of heroes called the Eternals, ancient aliens who have been living on Earth in secret for thousands of years, who come out of the shadows to reunite against mankind's most ancient enemy, the Deviants. So, Lee, were you looking forward to this one? Based on, potentially the director, perhaps the talent. I mean, were you familiar with the characters of the Eternals? Because, I'm a Marvel fan. I've read some comics, but I can't say that I'm too familiar with this particular group of heroes.
No, not really. I was more interested in sort of Chloe Zhao as sort of being attached. That obviously this has been kind of coming for quite a long time, and we'd know it was coming even before her success with Nomadland. But I really enjoyed The Rider, a film she put out a few years ago, which I think had people that saw it loved it, but not many people did. But it was one of those ones it was kind of the traditional thing of indie filmmaker goes on and makes a Marvel movie. We know that all too well at the moment, but it was one of those ones, I think, more and more lately, whether it's something like Free Guy, for example, or, I know I'm in the minority when it comes to Dune, where I might not be feeling the trailers. I'm like, I just don't think I'm going to like this film that much. And, I was a bit kind of hesitant going into sort of Eternals. I suppose instead of hesitant, I wasn't in so much a rush because it came out on Friday, and I finished early on Friday and went to see Card Counter instead, and then kind of finally catch up with Venom 2. So, I was like, I'll put off Eternals to maybe Sunday. So usually with a Marvel movie, even if it's something like a Black Widow or a Shang-Chi, for example, something I'm not too bothered about, like some of the recent movies, I still have tended to go along on the first day. I will go for the first day for Spider-Man because I love the wee man. But Eternals, there was a bit of negativity. It felt like there was blood in the water, that people were going over it. Like, the film is fine. It's not as bad as people make it out, but, equally it's just, a mediocre Marvel movie is still not a bad way to spend a sort of Sunday afternoon. I by and large enjoyed it, but it's a heavily flawed film, and from runtime to some of the casting for sure, and some of the decisions involved. What about yourself? Because you saw this one quite a few weeks earlier.
I did, and I managed not to spoil it for anyone. I don't work for Variety, so I guess that's maybe why. But I did notice that after the Hollywood world premiere, there were spoilers dropped. After the Scottish press days, no spoilers. But then once it premiered in London, spoilers again. Always trust a Scottish critic, that's what I say. But yeah, no, I mean, it was... I think we're getting into the situation where the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been an incredibly ambitious project, starting off with movies for solo characters and then bringing them in together for, Avengers team ups and stuff like that. But it's almost got to the stage now where it's almost too big. And bringing in new characters, especially ones that are, as apparently powerful as the Eternals, who've been here for 7,000 years, and have not made their presence known, leads to situations where they basically have to then address the question, as Kit Harington has to put it up, where were you, why didn't you fight Thanos and stuff like that, where were you? And it's like there's some really hokey excuse like, oh, we were only allowed to interfere when the bad guys were deviants. It sort of reminded me of Doctor Who, and sort of, he's like, oh, why didn't you help out on this and this? And he talks about some random nonsense about fixed points in time that cannot be disturbed and stuff like that. It's just like, it sounds like a bit of a cop-out excuse. And then, when you get to the end of the film, where it's where they're battling the Emergence, which for me seemed very similar to the villainous plot from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Bad guys like planting seeds of destruction in planet Earth, apparently. At that point, a potential world-ending event you'd think would be on the radar of, the Avengers or Doctor Strange or something like that, and it's like your favorite thing of where's Poochie? It's like everyone should be asking, where's Doctor Strange? Where's Spider-Man? Where's Captain Marvel? And it's like, nope, they're not around, they're off doing something else. So it just feels like, because they've brought in all these characters and you see them regularly interacting, we've got Doctor Strange is going to be part of the new Spider-Man movie. It's like, people are going to probably potentially ask, where are these all other characters? Because technically, if you're in the comic books, and the comic books are all owned by Marvel, there is no reason in the world that, you cannot drop a character in there. Obviously, it's much more difficult. You've got to, everyone's tied up to 10 picture deals, and once you use them in one movie, you then can't use them in another and stuff like that. And I think for me, the issue with Eternals was, like you say, it's not a great film. It's a deeply flawed film. But even the most mid-tier Marvel film is still a lot better than some of the other, Hollywood blockbuster fare that you get. So, it's not a bad film. It's just not as good as some of the other films which Marvel have put out. It's very, very different. I think it took me about 20 minutes to sort of get used to it. I was sort of watching it going, there's something not right here when I was watching it, sort of looking at it, and then realised that it's like, there were several scenes basically with no CGI. It was all done with natural light and stuff like that. And that was almost a shock to my system. The fact that, she was filming all this in real locations and using, whatever natural light she had around her. It wasn't overly CG'd and stuff like, obviously, that changes towards the end of the film. So, that's when it really started to clash, when her filmmaking style, as always, seems to, when you bring in these directors who have a particular style. You want them to do their thing, but then they still have to fit into the Marvel mold, cookie cutter style. You know, everything has to have certain plot points that need to be hit and stuff like that. That's when you have the issue. You know, why are you bringing these people if you're just really wanting a journeyman director to, you know, bring out a Marvel movie which is exactly the same as every other movie. You know, people say they want different stuff, but then when they do get different, they then complain about it being different. So it's very, very difficult to do. For me, this one, you know, after the success of like WandaVision and stuff like that, I feel this would have worked much better as one of their limited series over like 6-hour long episodes. I think the problem is diving into this world where I'm pretty sure it's like 9 or 10 new characters that all need to be introduced. They all get a tiny little moment in the opening sort of segment, and then you've got the sort of, we have to get the band back together. You know, they've all gone their separate ways, living out throughout history, and then we need to get the band back together to fight these deviants and stuff like that. Which for me, by the way, that whole evolving deviant subplot could have been removed. So, you know, there was no real need for it to be there apart from bringing in some CGI characters for them to fight and stuff like that. Didn't feel it was needed at all. I mean, what did you make of the character and stuff? Was there any particular sort of cast standouts for you in this one?
A little bit. I thought Gemma Chan wasn't much of a leading sort of presence. You know, our character's interesting, but I was just kind of like, I just didn't feel it. And I thought Richard Madden was very good. You know, you say you can trust a Scottish critic. Can you really trust a Scottish god? Maybe a bit less so. But it was just weird. It had such an interesting cast where, you know, Angelina Jolie didn't seem to kind of do much. Selma Hayek, much and such the same. I didn't even realise that was Bill Skarsgård until the end credits. I thought Richard Madden, you know, Kumail Nanjiani, Barry Keoghan, I'm not sure the name of the actor who played his valet. I thought they were excellent.
I think it's Hamish Patel.
Oh yeah,
Hamish Patel. Yeah. So yeah, no, I really liked Kingo. I would quite happily watch a mini series of Kingo's adventures in Bollywood.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, obviously I've picked all the male characters there, but I just felt sort of like Gemma Chan's character was very underserved. She just didn't have much of a presence. I didn't really sort of buy into her kind of hero's journey, and I thought sort of Angelina Jolie was a bit wasted, just constantly just sort of glaring into things and stuff like that, not really doing much. And, you know, sort of like Salma Hayek was fine in her spots, but didn't have the greatest amount to do. I mean, it's one of those things, for such a stacked cast, it's quite uneven, sort of some of the people's involvements. I forget the name of, I think her name is Lauren Ridloff, the deaf girl. I thought she was really good with what she had to do, I must admit. I
think she got too little to do. I think she was the one that lost out most, I think, because she is the last one to sort of be recruited, and by that point I think that, you know, there is clearly, you know, a lot of chemistry between her and Barry Keoghan. You know, in just a very, very minimal, like probably just a couple of minutes, they're able to, I think, give more chemistry between the two of them than there was between Gemma Chan and Richard Madden, or Gemma Chan and Kit Harington, to be honest. And as always, we point out Lea Seydoux and James Bond as well, and but yeah, no, I think, yeah, it felt like that they got big names in for some of the smaller roles, and then we're looking to build up new characters. For me, I think it was Don Lee, as he's now known in the US. I wish there was more of him. I was a huge fan of his in Train to Busan, and would like to have seen more of him. But I think there was just not enough time. I think, you know, when you look at like it moves forward in time with the story of the deviants, but then as they introduce each character, they go back in time to look at them throughout history and stuff like that. And this is where it's sort of very Doctor Who-esque, you know, looking at how these characters have influenced history, you know, not directly but indirectly and stuff. That for me is a potentially fantastic Doctor Who-esque style Marvel TV series. I know there was a lot made about one particular plot point. I mean, did you? Because this would have been on Twitter before you would have seen it. What did you make of the Hiroshima moment on Twitter before going to see the film, and then what did you make of it in its actual context?
I mean, it was fine in the cinema. Like, I think it's still one of my favorite tweets of the year. I think someone was just trying to, you know, work a work, as it were, and see, I'm on fire with wrestling descriptions today. But yeah, it was like, oh yeah, the military sort of have to approve all these Marvel scripts, so they must have approved the Hiroshima thing. And James Gunn replied, oh, like on the gay event, the gay Eternal caused like Hiroshima or something like that. And then like James Gunn replied going, Marvel has, you know, nothing to do with the military like that. And it's like the guy replied like, I love how they've not denied the gay Eternal has caused Hiroshima to happen, but they just wanted to clear up that. And I just thought like, oh wow, like that film is potentially more interesting than I expected. I think there's a more interesting sort of character story to be had here about people maybe grappling in time. Like maybe it could have been like 2 or 3 kind of little sections where it was just about sort of the Eternals' journey to sort of maybe modern day or something like that. And, you know, then maybe sort of part 2 kind of takes off a little bit. I just thought there was a more interesting movie to be made there. It was an interesting moment. I'd love to have been in the room when they certainly came up with that moment. It's just quite silly when you just do think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people on Twitter are saying that yes, the black guy Fastos was directly responsible for dropping an atom bomb on Japan. It's like, well, no, technically, actually, if you'd watched the movie, he occasionally would provide technological advancements to the human race in order to help them move on, and basically human beings have then taken that technology and then got to such a place where, you know, they then end up destroying each other. And I mean, Droog has this situation where he is wanting to basically control all human beings in order to, using mind control, to basically stop them going to war with each other. And it's like, well, no, that's not our place. We need to let them be what they are. And obviously this feeds into what turns out to be a plan on the part of the Celestials, that a new Celestial will be born from the planet Earth, and the Eternals decide to stop it because, you know, they've become so fond of the human beings which they've lived through for so long. So really, this is very much, you know, the more I describe it, the more Doctor Who it's sounding. I think the Time and Space crew need to do an episode on the Eternals and look at all the points of comparison between the two. So, I mean, what did you make of for me, Marvel's biggest own of its competition in the fact that DC Comics exists within the Marvel Universe to the point where Icarus apparently is the potential inspiration for Superman? I mean, that's about as thick a move you could get on the part of Marvel, basically saying, yeah, we acknowledge you exist, but basically your characters were inspired by our characters. It seemed like a nice petty dig at the opposition for me.
Yeah, and there was also like a reference to Batman, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was the valet, like Alfred and Batman. It was like that. It takes you out of the movie because you don't expect them to be referencing each other so blatantly, do you?
Yeah, you don't expect them to cross the streams, as it were. Yeah, I thought it was all right. It was kind of I liked it a little bit. I mean, I thought Richard Madden was certainly better than Henry Cavill by some distance in the DCEU movies. So I liked. Here we go. Yeah, I thought he was just he certainly had a bit more presence, and you know, I thought he was quite good. So yeah, it's one of those things. Like I'm not a big comic book fanboy when it comes to these things of getting easily annoyed. So I was kind of like, yeah, fair enough. That's an odd choice, but you know, I liked how they threw that down. It'll be interesting to see if DC reply in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess we can talk about the post-credit scenes. Now, obviously, you know, we mentioned before that it was Variety apparently spoiled a couple of the major reveals in those post-credit things. Now, I had seen one on Twitter, but I had actually assumed that it was a joke. Someone was actually putting out something which sounded like one, but everyone was putting in their own 2 cents worth of what they would have been funny to see. But then it turned out to be true. So, what did you make of the introduction of Star Fox in the first post-credit sting? This is the Marvel character Star Fox, not the Nintendo 64 game Star Fox.
I think it was weird because, like, I knew the Harry Styles one was coming. I didn't know about the final one, for example. But I kind of watched it and I was like, oh right, oh, it felt like a bit of an odd tone. Like I felt like him and this little dwarf were in like the Guardians of the Galaxy style tone, which just wasn't this tone that I expected with Eternals. So I did find that a little bit jarring. And I don't mind what I've seen in Harry Styles film wise already, and I think he's got some interesting projects coming up, but it just felt like it took me a little bit out of it when you've got a lot of these character actors that, you know, a lot of them you might just be familiar with something, or they, you know, you kind of associate with them. With that, I was like, oh, that is Harry Styles. It just took a little bit of getting used to, which I don't really have an issue with in Dunkirk, funnily enough.
Yeah, no, I thought he was actually very good in Dunkirk. I mean, when he appeared, I was like, oh, that tweet was correct. And then I was like, well, actually, well done on them for getting to the point of it actually getting into cinemas before anyone actually knew that this was going to be a thing. I mean, brother of Thanos, I mean, I think the Thanos's and Star Fox's mum might have some questions to answer to the father both, because there's some slight genetic differences there, I would say. But maybe Thanos' dad was Grimace from the McDonald's things, perhaps. Who knows? But yeah, I guess it'd be interesting to see where that goes. But yes, when he arrived and with Patton Oswalt as the little munchkin guy, which was confusing again for me because he'd been voicing MODOK in the one of the Marvel sort of animated shows. So interesting to see where they go. But like you say, yes, I think the tone was definitely more sort of Guardians of the Galaxy than anything else that we've seen so far. And then Kit Harington pops up in the final one with a sword, hinting. He'd already done a brief hint a couple of minutes earlier about a complicated family history. I mean, I guess I should realise that anytime, you know, somebody says, oh, you know, you should phone your uncle before it's too late, you know, you should make amends. It's like, oh, yeah, who's his uncle? And it's like, who's Dane Whitman again? Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it turns out that he is going to potentially be a character called the Black Knight. And then he's about to pick up a sword, and then someone says, are you sure you want to do that, Mr. Whitman? And then a lot of people at the screening I was at, the press day screening, I don't think they'd actually cottoned on to whose voice it was. I recognised it immediately, but I mean, did you pick up on the voice straight away of the vocal cameo at the very, very end?
I thought it was who I thought it was. Kind of, I'd been so used to something like Moonlight, for example, which we discuss a lot on our other podcasts. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I think that's him. So yeah, I was kind of like, I thought it was, but then I sort of did the classic like Marvel post-credit scenes explain, because I kind of thought that was who it was, but I didn't have a clue who Kit Harington was meant to be.
Yeah, no, I had to Google the character Dane Whitman to find out exactly who was going to be, but I was like, that's definitely Mahershala Ali, and so he's going to be taking Jon Snow on a quest to hunt some vampires, I guess, or something like that. So the universe is ever widening; it will never narrow. It's like the Big Bang; it's going to get so big to the point where it eventually will collapse in on itself. So yes, I mean, we've got Spider-Man to come, which you said you're infinitely looking forward to more than this particular one. But I guess we'll leave that one for a later date, because we don't want to get into too many spoilers in case you haven't already sort of seen what's going on with that one. So next up is Spencer, an imagined fable based on a true story that theorizes what might have happened over 3 days from Christmas Eve to Boxing Day in 1991, when Diana spends Christmas with the royal family when she's on the verge of ending her marriage to Prince Charles. This one stars Kristen Stewart as Diana Spencer and is directed by Pablo Larraín, who had done one of your favourite films of the previous year, was it 2019, Emma, and also Jackie, the biopic starring Natalie Portman, which was just fantastic. So this is part 2 of a potential, who knows, trilogy of movies about young women who are under an incredible amount of pressure, not only emotionally but then externally from the press and stuff like that. I mean, who would you like to see the trilogy rounded out? I know that the TIFF Twitter account put one out saying who people want to see. I'm just going to throw out there Florence Pugh as Jade Goody. There we go. She's got a very specific sort of moment, I think, around the second entry into Big Brother and the Chopin story. That could be an excellent film, I think.
Yeah, I can't see past that one now. I mean, I know the boring answers like Britney Spears, but yeah, let's band together and go with that.
Yeah, Pablo Larraín probably has no idea who Jade Goody is.
Not yet.
No. So I expect you were probably looking forward to this one slightly more than Eternals. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I saw this one at the London Film Festival. So, yeah, as you mentioned, he directed two of my favourite films of the past few years. I mean, Jackie was the number one movie of that year. I can't remember. Was that 2016, 17? You know, oh God, time.
I think
but
that
yeah,
sounds about right, yeah.
yeah. And I know me and you have like championed sort of Kristen Stewart for quite a while now, but it still feels
before
like
everyone else.
yeah, before the mainstream, she's still the Twilight actress, and I totally get that, because a lot of the films that me and you rave about that she's been in are these indie movies that make no money at the box office, people don't know about, and you know, you might recognize her from being in sort of Charlie's Angels or that Christmas movie, for example, if you got the chance to watch
Happiest Season. I still think Charlie's Angels a very underrated performance. Not a great movie, but I think she's great in it.
I'm 100% with you. So like, yeah, I've kind of like, I thought with this one, it feels like it's taken almost a decade, but I think for mainstream audiences, like, this will be the movie that shows she's not just the Twilight person anymore. You know, it's so easy in our bubble just to think that everyone is aware of these films that we're watching. But I was looking forward to it. I mean, I have no interest in the monarchy. I've never watched The Crown. Don't want to watch it. I don't believe in a monarchy, etc. You know, I think we should be a republic. But you know, with the combination of the talent involved in this one, from Lauren to Kristen Stewart to some of the other cast members, Johnny Greenwood composing, the cinematographer, I think, from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, like, I was immediately invested in seeing this film. So I went to see it at London Film Festival and really enjoyed it. Not as good as Emma or Jackie, but I really like the take that they've gone with it. Like, you know, it was so easy to make a kind of boring biopic version of this, but I love films about sort of condensed periods of time, and just watching her almost in this like horror element. Like, there was stuff I didn't know. For example, like, you know, her house was where she grew up, which was boarded up, was literally right next to sort of Sandringham.
Is that true?
True.
I wondered if that was maybe slightly exaggerated for dramatic effect. I didn't realize. It's like, wow, it's like, so yeah. She was still quite posh, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was definitely posh. And yeah, like that, I thought, like, I didn't believe that was going to be true either, a bit of creative license. But no, that was the case. Like, it was one of those things, if it wasn't sort of true, you wouldn't believe it to be the case. And I just loved sort of the body horror element. And like, you know, one of the creepiest scenes of this year was like, you know, almost things like how they get each other weighed, etc. There was just so many little things going on where it was like,
just a bit of harmless fun, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just cruel, and just that bit where they're all having dinner and all you just hear is like, there's no conversation, there's no talk, it's just the clanging of like spoons against things, and it just felt like really alien. And I watched that and I go, I 100% believe that must be what it's like to be in amongst these people. I mean, you know, I know people have got sometimes a soft spot for the Queen, but you just look at sort of what's been going on recently with Prince Andrew, etc. You know, there it is all a nest of vipers, and there's that ominous feeling, much kind of like Jackie to an extent, that just hangs over the whole film, where you know it's going to end in a real tragedy. And you're kind of rooting, much like kind of the staff there, for her to succeed, to break away, to make something of it. And I just thought it was, you know, really, really impressive. You know, I think Kristen Stewart is great as Diana. It's impossible to be British and not go, oh, she's doing a really good impression of that, I think. But, you know, I'm looking forward to watching this one again in the coming weeks.
Yeah, no, I was really, I mean, I think you did you pay for your ticket? Did you actually buy a galley? That's how much you were looking forward to it. That's how much you wanted to see. You actually paid for your ticket. You know, I was really looking forward to this one. I don't think I've ever actually seen the Naomi Watts Diana.
No one has.
I think, yeah, no, I think I just gave that one a miss. But like you, I prefer a biopic which is set over a small window into that person's life. I'm not a fan of these like rays which basically, you know, chart their entire life sort of thing. I prefer sort of looking at a really interesting period in life, and this was a fascinating take. And I wasn't expecting. I was expecting maybe slightly more melodrama. I wasn't expecting to have this, like you say, a horror element to it, where it felt like this sort of haunted house that she's unable to escape from. I think Timothy Spall is really sort of quite sinister and chilling in this. I think that scene where he's in the walk-in fridge, it's like he felt like a character out of The Shining, sort of there to sort of manipulate and torment this woman into driving her insane almost. And there's some great supporting performances in here. I think Sally Hawkins is great. Sean Harris playing a good guy for once as well, looking as the head chef, looking to find a dish that Diana will actually eat, whether that's a chocolate mousse or a white chocolate mousse, stressing the white chocolate element of that. I think it needs to be said, a few people have been a bit disturbed by the bulimia aspect of it. I know it's mentioned in the BBFC certificate, but I don't believe that actually was in front of the London Film Festival screening. I think more people were needing a bit more awareness of it. So, I mean, there are several scenes that do examine her sort of eating disorders and stuff like that. So, fair warning for that. But I think it doesn't shy away from the more horrible aspects of the treatment she received from people and what that did to her. I mean, again, we have to stress that this is an imagined idea of what may have gone on. We don't know for certain one way or the other. But I certainly think Johnny Greenwood's score certainly helped to enhance it sort of felt like the score from The Shining, all sort of discordant tones and stuff like that, but then it had a sort of jazzy element to it, which sort of was used, I think, to sort of kind of highlight our increasingly fractured mental state. I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. I mean, I don't think I've burst out as loud laughing in a quiet screen this year as I did at the line of when she looked to get a maid out of the room and she says, "I need to masturbate." I was like, what? Whoa! It's like it's up there with the Julie, you are a dark horse, isn't it? So yeah, no, I think it was just a tremendous piece of filming. I really want to go and watch it again. And I mean, talking about things which are surprising to find out that they're true. Apparently, the KFC moment at in the film was indeed a real thing that happened.
There you go. I definitely felt in the mood to go for a KFC after I left the South Bank that at like 10 o'clock that night.
Absolutely. Have you got your KFC Spencer jumper?
Oh God, I saw that. I must admit that is the weirdest promotion I've ever seen in the world. Like, it's insane. I know, like, I'm sure you've seen it. A24 doing this thing of like weird movie merch auction at the moment. I have not seen anything that weird. Like KFC doing a crossover with the movie Spencer. Like, it sounds like an Onion article.
I know, yeah. If anyone wants one, apparently there was a famous Diana jumper that she wore at several sort of public outings, which was a red jumper with white sheep on it, but it had one black sheep on it. Perhaps a pointed reference that she was the black sheep of the royal family. And KFC, because clearly they were so enamored, someone in the KFC saw Spencer and went, we should ride on the coattails of this thing. So they've produced a similar jumper to that design, but instead of sheep, it is chickens. So you can get one, you can order them. I'm really tempted to order one just to keep it in the wrapper, just in case, they turn out to be going for hundreds on eBay later on. But apparently, I think on the opening day at the KFC in Leicester Square, if you'd ordered a bargain bucket, you may have got a jumper for free. So
yeah, I think it was like the first 100, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're one of the lucky people to have a Spencer jumper, let us know. We want to see photos. But I am tempted to get one just to wear it on around Christmas, because it's a really subtle reference that basically whatever you're doing on Christmas, you'd much rather not be with your family and friends, and you just want to go out for a KFC.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, I look forward to seeing how many film hipsters wear it come Christmas Day.
So what do you think of Kristen Stewart's chances of an Oscar nomination or win? Because she hasn't been nominated yet. She's won the César, a French acting award for The Clouds of Sils Maria, but so far she's unable to have got an Oscar nomination. I mean, what do you think her chances are for this one?
I mean, it's pretty high, isn't it? Like, it's been a decent year so far, but there seems to be a bit of momentum at this stage. And, you know, looking ahead to the films that are still to come up, I think this could be, you know, the one to beat. It just feels like momentum's on its side, which is always something important when it comes to sort of the acting nominations. Sometimes the films themselves that win on the day can be a bit of a crapshoot, but I think she stands a really good chance here.
I think she will get, definitely will get a nomination. I think, you know, she's playing a real life person, and more than that, a real life dead person. So that's always high up on an Oscar voters list. And she seems to be playing the game, which I wasn't expecting. You know, I think following Twilight, she was a bit turned off from dealing with the press and stuff like that, and all the attention she was getting from the Twilight movies, but she seems to be out doing the circuits, working the festivals and stuff like that. So yeah, I think she's got a very good chance, and it'd be nice to see that, and then potentially maybe our Pats will get one as well, and they could reunite in a future film as an Oscar power couple instead of just those two from Twilight. So. Finally, we're going all in because it's The Card Counter by Paul Schrader, writer of Taxi Driver and writer-director of First Reformed. And this film follows a character called William Tell, played by Oscar Isaac, who is out of a military prison and working the casinos in Atlantic City on the East Coast, counting cards to make a bit of money, either on blackjack and potentially playing poker as well. There he meets a woman played by Tiffany Haddish who wants to recruit him into the Poker World Series, and also he meets a enigmatic young man named Kirk with a C, who recognizes him from Oscar Isaac's past, and they both have a connection to a security person, Lieutenant Major Gordo, played by Willem Dafoe, and it's about Oscar Isaac trying to decide what he's going to do with his life now that he's out of prison. So what did you make of this one? It's, you know, a high quality cast. You know, Paul Schrader is infamous, more probably particularly now more famous for his Facebook posts than the fantastic First Reformed. But it seemed to kind of drop here in the UK with very little fanfare, very little press screenings. But I have to say the Saturday night screening I went to at my local Cineworld actually was very busy. So I don't know how people found out about it, but maybe it was the Oscar Isaac factor. You know, he's been on a run recently. Maybe they saw June, maybe it was trailers in front of that, and they said, I need another bit of Oscar Isaac. Which is never a bad thing.
I think it's great counter programming. Like, we're now getting to the stage where, you know, there's always a film that just sort of drops when a superhero movie or a Star Wars or something pops along. And I think the Card Counter is definitely one of those films. I mean, I kind of wanted to go in as blind as possible with this, because, like, it wasn't sort of a movie where the trailers were showing a lot. Like, I just knew sort of the cast, and that was enough for me in a basic, like, one sentence premise. And what I really liked about this movie, where with something like Eternals, you could kind of, for example, plot it out, you know where it's going to go. And with Spencer, for example, we all know, you know, obviously it's not shown in the film, but we know the fate that's going to come across this character. I kind of spent the whole nearly 2 hours of the Card Counter going, where's this going to go? And just that kept me on like an edge. Like, if you've ever been in a casino, it's that weird atmosphere where you're watching them. It could be any time of the day that they're in there. It's these odd, sterile environments, especially these sort of cheaper casinos that they're going to along the East Coast, Atlantic City. You know, they're sort of trapped in a time warp almost. And I just didn't know where that film was going to go. And that is something that's so rare in a film these days. You know, very few of the films I've seen this year, apart from maybe sort of this, First Cow, for example, I could have said, oh, I think it'll roughly end around this point, or it'll go in this direction, you know, going into the film or having started watching it. And I didn't think this was where that film was going to go. And, you know, I think it stumbles a little bit towards the end, but I loved it. I was gripped, and, you know, I thought it was a great performance from Oscar Isaacs. It was a real highlight of the year for me.
Yeah, I mean, I want that jacket, and I need to know who his tailor is, because those clothes were like so perfectly tailored to his body. It's like, I want that jacket. I'm going to start wearing a grey shirt and a tie to everything now. I think I thought he was fantastic. I think, like you say, it was a very unpredictable sort of film and screenplay. In some aspects, it's like a sort of underdog sports story with sort of the gambling thing going to the World Series, You've got a bit of a revenge plot in there, but you've then got the sort of odd couple road trip style movie. Like I say, it never really manages to settle on a particular tone. It's always sort of flip flopping, but again, like poker or something, it's it's very unpredictable. Just depending on what hand you're dealt and stuff like that, and I guess the hands are being changed constantly and stuff like that. Whereas as he says rather bluntly at times in his descriptions of card counting and stuff like that, it's your odds are if you can count or whatever, you can shift the odds to your favor and stuff. And it felt like he'd been reading a lot of Blackjack for Dummies and stuff like that in that aspect. And there was some odd moments like this young kid who was really surprised that Google Earth and Google Streets was a thing. That felt like Paul Schrader in his 80s sort of suddenly discovering a new aspect of the internet, and unfortunately decided to voice that with a young kid in the role. But Paul Schrader really does love his troubled, complicated men who like to drink whiskey, write journals, and become savior/father figures to troubled youth, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's got his thing that he goes to, and he does it really well. It's one of those things some people you'd be almost a bit turned off by, but he always finds a new way to put a clever spin on it, and they always seem kind of spaced out over time as well. So yeah, all good.
Yeah. So it was an odd movie. It's certainly not going to work for everyone, but overall, you were positive on it then, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. It was just a good adult movie. If I don't imply that about any other ones, but it's just a movie that's aimed at a very specific audience that are often underserved by movies they can go see at like a Cineworld like that. So it felt good, and I'm happy to hear your screening was busy. I mean, mine was a 12 o'clock screening on a Friday, and not always the busiest time for the demographic that this is filmed is aimed at. But I'm hopeful this one will be a bit of a success.
I hope so, yeah. I mean, like you say, it's counter-programming at this stage, and it is playing to an adult or a grown-up adult audience, not an adult audience, but a grown-up adult audience looking for something different from the mainstream movies. And for me, there seems to be something, I don't know if it's the multiplexes at the moment, but there does seem to be a reticence to showing this kind of movie. It was on at like 10 to 8, like once a day, at my local Cineworld, and this is the same. So it's now what I'm going to call the last dual slot, where it's like a grown-up movie, which is not based on any franchise or whatever. It just seems to get one showing a day in a late slot, which can be a bit off-putting for some people. It's like, oh, it starts at 8, it's going to finish like 10, half 10, or maybe in the case of Last Duel, potentially 11 o'clock. It might put off people, but I'm glad that people were turning out. Clearly, Oscar Isaac is potentially a better draw than a terribly bearded Matt Damon these days. But I hope that. But it's the kind of thing which your independents and your local cinemas will probably give more of a batting to. I know that Car Counter will be at the Belmont, but it won't be there till the end of the month. And I really needed a slice of Paul Schrader earlier than that, so I'm glad I managed to catch it. But if you can hold on and bide your time, then you can probably catch them at potentially slightly more amenable times at your local independent as well.
And you can take a cold drink in with you like you would at a casino. So win-win.
Oh, well, there you go. And no, not nachos, unless you went to an Everyman. Maybe Everyman you can get food delivered to your seat, or if it was a VIA screening at Cineworld as well, you get some free nachos or something like that. So a very eclectic mix of films this week. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're going to review, but we'll think of something, because I know that the week after we'll have a couple of big hitters like Ghostbusters Afterlife and Will Smith's return to form in King Richard. But until then, we'll see you down the road and see you at the movies. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd